Good morning. This is Deepak, and I'm answering your questions as usual. Most of the questions are from readers of You Are the Universe, Discovering Your Cosmic Self and Why It Matters. But today I'm answering a question that has been posed to me by a colleague by the name of Tam Hunt, who's a neuroscientist and a cognitive neuroscientist, and subscribes to the theory of panpsychism, which is that every material object has an element of consciousness, starting from atoms to the entire universe. It's kind of a backdoor entrance to physicalism or materialism. But he keeps asking me the same question many times, and that is, if the world is an experience in consciousness, why does it look the same to all of us? I've answered his question many times in various ways, but he's not satisfied. Dr. Tam Hunt is not satisfied. So last night I was reading once again one of my favorite books, which is The Nature of Consciousness, Essays on the Unity of Mind and Matter. This book is from the great spiritual teacher Rupert Spira. Now, here's what I have to say about this book. I've gained deeper understanding listening to Rupert Spira than I have from any other exponent of modern spirituality. Reality is sending us a message we desperately need to hear, and at this moment, no messenger surpasses Spira and the transformative words in his essays. So I highly recommend this book. But I'm going to answer Dr. Tam Hunt's question. Once again, Dr. Hunt, but in the words of Rupert Spira. It is precisely because the world appears in and is made of infinite, indivisible consciousness that it appears from the perspective of each finite mind to be the same world. It is the same world because all finite minds are refractions of the same consciousness. It is the sameness of consciousness which shines in and as each of our minds that is responsible for the conviction that we all share the same world. In the same way, all the characters in a night dream feel that they share the same world because they are created by the same dreaming mind. The sameness of the world is the sameness of consciousness. Our shared world is a shared consciousness. The vastness of the universe is the vastness of consciousness. Each finite mind finds that the world is much bigger than itself, and this intuition is true. There is more to the world than an individual mind, but this doesn't imply that the world is outside consciousness. When a mind experiences the vastness of the universe, it is experiencing a segment of God's infinite being. I know neuroscientists don't like the word God, but so be it. I'll repeat. When a mind experiences the vastness of the universe, it is experiencing a segment of God's infinite being from its own limited perspective. And it is for this reason that we feel such awe and wonder before nature. Materialists use the intersubjective agreement, the agreement that individual minds share their experience of the same world, as proof that there is an independently existing world outside of consciousness. However, this is just an interpretation. This intersubjective agreement can also be used to assert the opposite point of view, namely that the similarity of everybody's experience of the world is an inevitable consequence of the shared nature of our minds at their deepest level. One might argue that it is not possible to choose between these two opposing assertions, both of which use the same evidence, our shared world as their proof. However, there's a difference between them. The materialist perspective is not grounded in experience. It requires an abstract line of reasoning that presupposes the existence of a reality outside consciousness, although nobody has ever experienced this, nor could they ever experience it. The materialist point of view asserts that the reality of which is never experienced, I'll repeat that, the materialist point of view asserts the reality of that which is never experienced, and that is matter, and denies that which alone is always experienced, consciousness itself. This is the tragedy and the absurdity of the materialist perspective from which humanity is suffering. The second point of view, which is not just the spiritual but also the truly scientific point of view, is in line with our experience and so should trump the materialist perspective, which turns out to be nothing more than a belief and as such simply a popular religion. For this reason, the materialist perspective should be sliced out of our contemporary worldview with Occam's razor, and the laws of physics, as a result, should be upgraded to laws that govern the unfolding of mind rather than the behavior of matter. For centuries, our culture has been dominated by the materialist view of reality. It is not necessary to point out the devastating effects of this view. The extent of suffering and the conflict in society speaks for itself. If the human race still exists in 500 years' time, hopefully people will look back on this period of materialism just as we now look back on the theories of a flat earth and a geocentric universe that dominated our world culture for centuries. If humanity does not still exist in 500 years' time, it will most likely be because materialism pervaded. Okay, that's the answer to Dr. Tam Hunt, the cognitive scientist. Now, I should add that, of course, the universe that we experience is a human universe, not a mosquito universe or a dolphin universe or a bat universe or a snake universe. Each species of consciousness, because what we call species are actually species of consciousness that experience mind, body, and universe. Only humans are trying to figure it out, but each species of consciousness experiences its own universe, and yet there is the leaking of experience between different species, such as, for example, if you have a relationship with your dog or your cat or another animal, then there's leaking of experience, even though the perception may be different. We don't know what another species of consciousness is actually perceiving, but we can have a relationship called love or understanding or compassion or joy or playfulness, as when you play with your dog or cat. Then there is a leaking of experience, which is trans-species. I'll come back in 15 seconds and conclude today's talk. I was saying that there is a leaking of experience between species. So you can actually share experience with your dog or your cat, an experience of love, an experience of playfulness. Then even though the exact perception of that species may be different, you still have a leaking. I think especially with mammals, we have a leaking of experiences, such as horses, for example. People who are very close to horses or dogs or cats have a very important exchange of experience. But all experience is still in consciousness, and that consciousness is not local, it's not in space-time, it is always present as awareness, always present and awareness, as awareness, always present as now and here. Now is not a location in space-time. Now is not a moment in time, and here is not a location in space. Now here is the ever-present, eternal awareness in every experience. Somebody said, why is this really important? Well, this is important for precisely the reason I mentioned, and for precisely the reason I read from Rupert Spira's book, which is that a materialist interpretation of the universe and of the world has caused havoc and destruction. Havoc and destruction, risking our extinction as a species of consciousness and risking the extinction of other species. All that we see as damage to the world is a result of this materialist interpretation, whether it's extinction of species or climate change or eco-destruction or social and economic injustice. This is all a lack of understanding of our spiritual nature. We are non-local beings having a local experience or interpreting our experience as in space-time, but the experience is always in a non-local awareness. And this addresses the 5 kleshas, the 5 causes of human suffering. The fear of death, clinging to impermanence, afraid of impermanence, the fear of impermanence, identifying with the ego. All these are basically the causes of human suffering. And if we understood who we are, then of course we would treat each other separate. We would treat each other differently. As separate ego identities, we are always out to prove the other wrong. We need to control, we need approval, validation. But if we are all branches of the same consciousness, all little rivulets of the vast, dimensionless, infinite, non-local, eternal being, then love is the only choice we can make in every situation, in every circumstance, in every event, in every encounter, in every relationship. Love then becomes not just a sentiment or an emotion, but the ultimate truth at the heart of creation. Okay, once again, I highly recommend this book by my friend Rupert Spira, The Nature of Consciousness, Essays on the Unity of Mind and Matter. And I hope, Dr. Tam Hunt, you will read it as well. Thank you, and all the best.